Hello and welcome to the 4th episode of Forza Horizon Online. Today we'll be taking a look at another 3 races which all happened directly after the races in episode 3. There is one main difference between the races in this episode and those of the last episode, and that is all down to one guy. He joined the lobby during the last race and is of comparable speed to me. He is in a car which I've heard is the fastest in B class, so that could be a factor in how he's so quick, but no matter what it is, it means I'm under pressure. Now in the previous races I'd been completely dominating, so this took me by surprise, and you can see how my driving has changed since being under pressure. I'm making a lot more mistakes, looking behind a lot more, and not focusing on the road ahead. The guy I'm racing actually gets ahead of me at one point, but I'm able to cut back on him despite all the mistakes I make, I manage to stay in front. This is quite surprising and suggests that I'm probably inherently quicker than this guy, and it's just my mistakes that are allowing him to keep up. But dealing with pressure can be difficult, and it's something I'm not very good at, mainly because I simply haven't had to do it very often. The absolute worst thing you can do when you've got someone behind you is keep looking back at them. I really miss having a rear view mirror on Horizon, because that allows you to easily glance at what's happening when you need to, but sometimes you can even focus too much on that. As I said in my previous video, when you get a bit of a gap, you need to just focus on your own race. This is something I didn't do here. As we head on to the final lap, I'm sure my mistakes have been easy for you to see, and I'm all over the place with the car. My whole driving style just shows how uncomfortable I am with having someone so close behind me, and if you were to look back at the previous episode and compare, you'd see very big differences with the way I'm driving. I'm basically trying too hard, and that causes me to make mistakes like you've just seen. By looking back too often, I'm also taking my mind off the race itself, and any small lapse in concentration is enough to send me into the wall. I do manage to hold him off though and win the race, although it was hardly convincing to say the least. So we'll move on to the second race in a moment, and it's on the same track that was featured second in the previous video. Now I don't particularly like this track, and this, along with the pressure being put on me, shows. I get overtaken off the line and try too hard to get back in front with half-hearted moves up the inside on the first 2 corners, which actually slows me down. So now I'm behind and should be doing what I mentioned in the last video, focusing on my own race to try and catch up. But I'm feeling the pressure of being closely matched, and I overdrive the car to try and catch up, which ends up in me hitting everything I can. There's just lots of stupid little mistakes which I'm making because I'm trying too hard to catch up. Taking a tiny bit too much speed into a corner can mean you run wide, hit a wall, and lose so much more time than you ever would have gained. If I'd just been a bit more composed and focused, I would probably have been able to stick with him. Instead, I end up losing by quite a large margin, although I do improve slightly on the final lap. And the worst thing is that I didn't really lose because I'm a slower driver. I lost because I couldn't handle the pressure. It was all psychological. And that's half the battle when it comes to close racing. It's all well and good being quick when you're on your own on a track and just eking out better and better lap times. But if you can't jump into a race with other people who are of a similar skill level as you, race properly and fairly, and at least put up a good fight, you're not much of a driver after all. Having said that, you're always going to face adversity. Eventually you will come up against someone who is either better or just as quick as you, and it's how you react to this that makes you what you are. I was lulled into a false sense of security by the numerous easy wins I'd had before this guy joined. I was therefore taken by surprise when he was able to stick with me, and as you've seen, I didn't cope with the pressure of that very well. But the quicker you can change your mindset, the better you'll do. After this race, I knew I'd have to perform a lot better if I was going to beat this guy, and that allowed me to be a lot more prepared for the next race. My mind was in the right place, and it happened pretty quickly, but it took a bit of a shock and a loss for it to get there. And I think in this very race you can see that change. On the final lap I know that I've lost, so just go back to focusing on driving properly. Compare the final lap to the first and it's a huge difference. I had to have this race to allow my mind to reset itself after feeling the pressure in the first race, but it meant I was in a much better position going forward, and we'll head on to that third race now. So, I'd won one and I'd lost one. I needed to leave, but I figured I'd do one more race as a decider, and it's back on the track which was featured first in the previous episode. And with this race there is a notable difference in the way I drive. I'm on a track which is probably my favourite, and I regain my composure a lot. You'll notice that I only look back once per lap on the start-finish straight, and I'm entirely focused on my own lap times, which make me produce some great speed around some of the corners, particularly the first half of lap 2. Even in his presumably slightly better car, the guy I'm racing against just can't catch up to me, and by the end of lap 2 the tables have been turned as he makes a mistake on the final corner. Now he's the one feeling the pressure. He's just completely trounced me in the last race and now can't understand why he can't even catch up to me, and starts to overdrive the car himself, which means he makes mistakes. So I've turned it around and am now able to show just how good I am. But it's not all perfect. On the final lap I have a comfortable lead, and during the first half of the lap start to drive a little more cautiously, which is a mistake as it slows you down a lot more than you want it to. I also look back a few times more than I should, but manage to get it all back together again and am back to my old self for the second half of the lap. It's this ability to realise when you're doing things wrong and shrug off mistakes to start concentrating on what you should be concentrating on, which will get you those wins that you may otherwise have lost. I'm by no means perfect at doing it, but the ability is at least there in some form. So that's it for me when it comes to dealing with pressure. I'm not the best at it, but the more practice you get, the better you'll be. It's all psychological, so the more confident you are in your own abilities, the better. In the next episode, I'll either be showing you the best race I've had on Horizon so far, or some online footage from the Horizon Rally DLC pack. Either way, those two things are likely to be the next two videos regardless of the order. Until then though, best of luck in all your own races, and let me know how you deal with pressure. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.